This is Fabiola here from Germany, and you are watching Teacher Learning Cast with Piry Herrera and Benjamin Stewart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teacher Learning Cast, episode number 3. This is Benjamin Stewart in beautiful Aguascalientes, in a place very much familiar to me. Looks like my home.
Hello, welcome everybody. Nice morning, and our third show, and really glad to be part of this adventure, Ben.
Absolutely. This is our third show, and really getting started with new topics, all related to education, teaching, and learning. Our context, for those who have followed us, or those who don't know us, we teach in a BA program, and we are teaching English language teachers. So we're teacher trainers, and each week, every Saturday morning, we get together and discuss different topics. You can get involved in the conversation. We're always looking for educators who want to come in and be part of the conversation. If you want to be part of the live broadcast, just reach out to us. We have a Facebook page. I think that would be the easiest if you're on Facebook. If you search Teacher Learning Cast, you'll find a page where you can reach out to us and share ideas throughout the week. And again, as I mentioned, be a part of the live broadcast. We're always looking for people to participate and share experiences.
Yes, and sorry, but I remember last week we were discussing several aspects about context, and we are trying to get into topics that are common for everybody at different educational levels, and we are trying to give opinions and get into readings about whatever we find out may be interesting for you. So please, that's what we want to know. If you don't have like really questions or comments right now, you may have topics of interest in which you want us to cover in the show, and we can invite you to join us to come live with us on a Saturday morning, and later on the video will be on demand for everybody. So share, please, like the page at Facebook, share it with everybody, and tell them, well, we are live mornings at 8:15 Saturdays morning, and later on demand you can watch it on. So for today, Ben, what do we have for today?
We got a great show here for you today. We actually have a lot of things to talk about, and part of what we're going to talk about. In fact, we'll go ahead and start with the first segment. Is personal learning networks, and there's some interesting things I wanted to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. I came across a piece that discussed cultivating and growing your personal learning network. And there's a couple of points here I wanted to share and see what you thought about some of these, PD. And the piece really started out by asking the question, do you have a personal learning network? And I think it's important really to start the discussion really to try to define first what a personal learning network might look like. And for the purposes of this discussion, when I think about a personal learning network, I'm really thinking about 3 different interrelated aspects of a network. One being the sharing of ideas, opinions, and concepts. Number 2, really the connections of different materials or technologies we use to communicate those ideas. And number 3, the social relationships that are developed through the sharing of those ideas, through the technologies that are being used. So I look at those 3 aspects, ideas, materials or technologies, and social relationships, as really the personal learning network that one looks at and designs and cultivates to promote his or her own learning. So I think the point of asking the question, do you have a personal learning network, I think is interesting, because I don't really even think that we develop a personal learning network out of nothing. I think we all have a network, whether we're aware of its potential or not, whether we use technologies or not. I think we all have a personal learning network that we rely on to connect with others. I don't know, Piry, how you think about that. If you've thought about your own personal learning network, what it looks like, how it's changed over time.
Well, it's really interesting because I'm thinking about my students and I'm thinking about the way they interact outside the classroom, the way they interact through the technology they are using right now. I'm thinking about us talking in the halls of the university and discussing things and managing to mix this social environment at the same time that we share our academic ideas in order to have a better development, and then how that has an impact on the way I go to another person or another teacher and I have a discussion, maybe taking back whatever I grasp from our conversations, and same thing with the students, whatever they grasp among themselves, and then coming to the teacher and having more questions or more ideas to also share in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a personal learning network as really an extension of the old days where teachers would congregate in a teacher's lounge, right? And they just get together and they share ideas, thinking of it from a teacher standpoint. But as we're also teaching teachers, we have to look at our students too to see, well, how can we as their facilitators help them develop this awareness of their own personal learning network? Again, regardless of what kinds of technologies are involved or not. I think it's interesting that in this piece that I read, that I shared with you here just a few minutes ago online and on screen, they mentioned that before, something like only 15%, 15 to 20% of the teachers were really connected, quote unquote connected, presumably online, and that this was such a low number. And I think we have to be careful about looking at our network, our own personal learning network, only in terms of technology. I think that's perhaps not the best way to look at it, because I think that we need to look more importantly at the types of ties or connections that we have, not necessarily the number or not even necessarily the technology, because I think that might be short-sighted depending on who we're connecting with. For me personally, I think a personal learning network really is, the value of it depends on the type of connection. That is, how we communicate, right? If you're connected with a person, what does that person know? And how do you communicate, how often, and what type of communication is set between those individuals? And really looking at each individual in terms of, how do you communicate, how often, and what are the means of communication? Again, it's easy to think in terms of technology, but as you mentioned, so importantly, it could be just connecting with someone across the hall, or down someplace close, or maybe even a face-to-face setting in a convention, and so on.
Yeah, and how those learnings or ideas or prompts for major thoughts change your mind or prompt your mind exactly to have a wider view of different situations, a different perspective, or maybe things that you didn't really consider come to whatever you are discussing, right? And yeah, as I tell my students when they come here and we start having reflection and feedbacks and all that about whatever they are doing in their classroom, it's whenever they have a moment in which they need more support, I may give an idea from my perspective, but the most important thing about that idea is not to carry it out. It's to generate more ideas, to help students to generate their own ideas and their own transformation of whatever I come to suggest if it is necessary, and them to be 100% sure that whatever they are thinking now has come from a major process. It's not just one point of view. It's this interaction and this communication. And as you mentioned, I think it's one of the basic concepts, communication, to raise awareness.
In your case, let's take a 8th semester tutoring practicum course, how many students typically do you have in that course?
Sorry, didn't hear that. Your sound is getting like, for moments, it's getting like
Okay, I was asking about the course that you typically teach. Let's say an 8th semester practicum course. How many students typically take those types of courses?
Oh, we regularly have from let's say 16 to 22 students, more or less, and they go and have their practice, their teaching practice, in a real group, in real schools at their choice, in the educational level at their choice. They are the students around, let's say, around 18 years old, 18, 20 years old, around 20s, I guess, and they're just about to graduate.
All right, so one of the lines that I read in this piece, cultivating and growing your personal learning network, was, alone we are smart, together we are brilliant. And I'm thinking about in terms of your class. Let's say you have a class of 20 students, and of course you have your one-to-one tutoring relationship that you're giving feedback directly to the student based on what he or she's doing for that particular week, whatever he or she's working on. I'm wondering your thoughts about how we might integrate this idea of together we are brilliant, bringing in students in the class where there's some sort of environment that they can really share those experiences and really take advantage of, let's say, their own quote unquote personal learning network, right? With being their classmates in this case, what that might look like. And then the next level, the second part of that would be, how could they do similar or have similar interactions, maybe with people outside of their own class, even maybe outside your relationship as a tutor?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because somehow this individual work with each student in their reflection in whatever they do, it's coming to get this kind of community. And it's interesting you manage that because it's the kind of topic I'm gonna talk in a while. And but the community is being raised, and we're taking the advantage of technology. Before we would use the platform we are using for the class just as a repository of whatever they are producing individually, and the way the process goes, and the way they are transforming their reflections, their lesson plans, and all that. But right now it's been a year, or maybe more than a year, in which in my different classes I've been having these folders, individual folders, shared among themselves. So, and it's something that at the beginning I was wondering if they would be comfortable with that, and at the end nobody mind, and they all know they have access to other folders, and themselves they bring into the conversations aspects from other students that they read, from which they grew some ideas, and they want to try, and now it's becoming something a little bit more natural, that during these sessions we have, we all talked about, you can go to this folder and see this lesson plan, you can go to this reflection and see how this guy is reflecting, or something similar happened to this person, and it little by little it's getting more common in such a way that I already have students who are coming in pairs here to the individual sessions, which are no longer individuals. Now it's a pair, because they have a very similar group with a teacher, both of them with the same teacher, different groups, and pretty much they are working almost hand to hand in planning and in all this material. So yes, it's becoming kind of a community. And now that you mention it, yeah, it would be interesting to have once in a while these major sessions where everybody can jump in with their opinions on certain topics, right? 22 students may be kind of difficult to handle in this sharing and exploring, but sure, there will be a way.
Yeah, I just, I don't teach in the practicum strand, but I think that, I know that students have a lot of contact and a lot of opportunities in the lower semesters, or the earlier semesters, sixth and seventh semester, for example, where they have a lot of opportunities to work together with classmates and share ideas. And I know that as they get to the 8th semester, where the expectation for them is that they are more independent, and they should have a level of interdependency in their own teaching practice. But I still think it's very important for teacher trainers as they become professionals and start entering the field, that this idea of working together and sharing that they probably are more used to in the earlier semesters is really something that they should continue doing throughout their whole professional career. And because I think that's really the basis, as we've been talking about here, of maintaining and cultivating and really understanding one's own personal learning environment. I feel like sometimes the perception is, in general, that once you're graduated and you're a teacher, that's it, you're on your own type of thing, and you're really just working as you want, and you, this idea of kind of sharing kind of takes a back seat, you know. And I think that really sharing and making your own teaching practice as transparent as possible, I think, is really the what underlines being able to share in a personal learning network and really being comfortable. I think it's just a matter of being comfortable. Are you willing to share and share your materials and experiences with others, so that you can reap the benefits of maybe receiving some benefit in the future?
I think it may be part of the social aspect of this network, because it's really important the way you get along with people and the way what you said, that you're willing to give and receive and share and whatever is needed. It's it just came to my mind last year. I was in a course with the teachers from Programa START here in Aguascalientes, which is the national language program for primary education. And one of the teachers that was there as a presenter, she was mentioning us that they have groups for their planning that are informal. It's not something that is required. They decided to get together. Once you know which group you're going to have and where you're going to be, they get together with other teachers and they get together to plan once a week. And it's something that it may be interesting to look at and invite these people to share with us what happens in those sessions in which they create material, they plan classes, they share ideas, and it's something that it has become common amongst them. Some of them, I mean, it's something informal, and I know there are a couple of these groups around in town. Another thing that I've seen also is that in these congresses and workshops they attend for preparation, they start to bond and they make social links, which later become working links in which they support each other for their regular classes every day, which I happen to enjoy when I knew about that.
Well, and I think the key point that you're making here for me is that these teachers are forming these groups on their own, regardless of whether the authorities or coordinators or from the top are really pushing this. We're talking about some sort of organizational change from the bottom up. Right. And a lot of times, a lot can happen just on its own, just by having teachers rally together and form these groups, as you mentioned, regardless whether or not it's a policy, a school policy, or not. Now, I would, hope that at some point this type of change is also a top-down type of change, where you get support from the top down. But I think, as you've mentioned, it's not necessarily necessary. It's not always a requirement that we can, as teachers, just on our own, and oftentimes with limited resources, form the groups, form the networks that we need for a particular purpose. And these purposes don't necessarily need to be group purposes. What I mean by that is, the whole essence of a personal learning network for me is that there are two potential goals that can be achieved. One might be a group goal, depending on if you're in a formal education in a school, for example, where you're working together for a common goal. But you can also see, I think we can imagine cases where working towards a common goal like that could also help us achieve individual goals. Let's say more specific, if we're looking at increasing or improving our English proficiency or our certain skills in a certain area. I think that we need to be looking at it honestly from those two perspectives, so that people are willing to participate. I think it's not selfish to think, well, what am I going to get out of this experience beyond this common goal of maybe that's stipulated in some school policy.
Right. I mean, a lot to talk about this topic. I just remind again that my thesis for the master's degree was something that a teacher came to tell me that it was kind of weird, because I was talking about autonomous language learning centers, the self-access centers. But my point was to create learning communities in autonomous language learning centers. And he was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about here? But because it's autonomous learning and you want to create communities. But that was the point, that you get your individual goals and things that you want to reach, and you manage to make contact with others with similar goals, or things that complement each other. And one of the cases I took in the master's was one student that wanted to develop her listening skill, and she was really good at grammar and other aspects, and she could create like communication in a spoken way, but her listening was a problem. And she worked together with somebody that was really good at speaking, but had problems in grammar. And they managed to come together into a conversation club. And that was pretty much the point. It's a simple example of the idea that I had. And at the end, well, it's something that helps everybody in their individual goals. And at the end, they reach common goals at the same time. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, that's really what it's, I think, all about. I mean, I think that whether we use the term personal learning network or not, I think some would think that this is a buzzword, and I know it's been used for some time now, but really that's what it boils down to, is how do we reach out and create a network where if we need support, we know where to find it. Yeah. Right? We know what space we need to go to. We know which person. We know what ideas to share. We know who has more ideas, or maybe better ideas than we have, who are smarter than us. And really, it's just understanding, having this metacognitive awareness of our own learning and our own network of learning, so that we are more proficient. We're better people. We can learn as much as we can, and depending on the particular set of circumstances.
Right, and that will be another big discussion, getting into the social part, the attitudes that create this confidence to approach people, the communication and ways of communication. I think we have a lot of material for further shows in here.
Absolutely. I'd like to remind everyone that our broadcast is open to any educator who wants to participate, and we encourage everyone to participate in our Facebook page under Teacher Learning Cast. And feel free to leave us feedback about the show. Let us know what you think. Provide us any type of information that would help improve. We're always open for positive and negative feedback, so feel free to share. Also, if you want us to talk about particular topics, feel free to share those as well. And of course, we're always looking for educators to join us in the live broadcast on Saturday mornings to hear from you, hear from your experiences.
Yes, and for the people that is following in Facebook Live, this is a secondary transmission in Facebook Live. The original transmission is in the link above, and you can see Benjamin Stewart in a first plane and myself in a first plane, which is a better view and better sound of the transmission. So, and please follow us. We also have our own websites, and you can join us, and you can get into Facebook and Teacher Learning Cast, look it like that, and you can see all our contacts in there, right? So
okay.
What next?
Yeah, so I think the next segment here, Piry, you had an interesting some information that you wanted to talk about regarding peer learning communities, teachers who are participating in peer learning communities.
Right, and it's interesting because it's all related to what we were just discussing about learning communities, and these networks of that we create. But I wanted to look at it from a perspective that when I was thinking about the topic for this week, it came to my mind because of different reasons and talks with my students. What I've heard several times from different teachers, that when you get into the classroom, you leave your personal life at the door, and then you get into the classroom. And then it's something that I've always, it's a debatable perspective, but I was thinking the other way around. When you go outside the classroom, do you leave the teacher inside? That's what with all that we have just said, it's obviously that we don't think so, right? But yeah, I mean, if you think you can leave the human being or the individual person, the personal life at the door, that would imply you also tend to leave the teacher inside the classroom, right? And that was, it may imply that, right? That was precisely the starting of this. So I started to research, all right, what are the roles of the teacher outside the classroom? And I happened to come across different texts and articles which mention things like, oh, the teacher as a counselor, the teacher as a coach in sports, the teacher as supporting students in their trajectory in the university, which will be again like the tutor, and different things like more related to still academic life inside the school itself, inside the institution. But then I came across a very interesting book, which I started to read the chapter, which I consider a little bit more related to this. And I want to share this with you. I don't know if you can see in the screen. I'm going to share the cover of this book. Can you see it, Ben?
Yes, I see it.
All right. I happened to get my eyes on this book. And this book is a compilation of different projects and ideas in which learning communities are created. And every chapter has something interesting to read and to see about it. And maybe I want to scroll down a little bit for the index. So you can see every chapter is a different situation, right? And everything goes for learning communities and the development. Especially, I want to focus on this chapter 2, which you can later go and check and read, and specifically and see different situations that occur in Israel, and in a very specific community where teachers started to create different projects to make a transformation in education. And I kind of see through the reading, I kind of detect that one of the implicit goals, though I haven't really came to the part where they really stated as a goal, but implicitly you can see that one of the main goals is to integrate community, different kind of people from the community, different races in the community, come together and have the same opportunities in learning. So the projects are really interesting, and one of the things I saw in there, I saw a project about teachers going outside the classroom to talk to parents, to help parents develop basic skills to support the students' learning, to create proper ways for the parents to know how to handle learning situation with the students and promote learning, promote motivation, promote research, promote interaction and communication. But the work was from the teachers to the parents outside. Another anecdote in there is about students creating research outside the classroom, along with the students creating groups of research outside, which is a really interesting project, and coming with a new model of education and a proposal for even a new kind of classroom with a new setting, even the furniture and whatever you have in there. So it's kind of interesting. The point with all of this is that it came to be an example for me and kind of evidence of the major impact that our lives outside the classroom have, and not only for learners, for everybody around. And I think that's not only for our, in the academic sense, for our students. I think that's obvious for everybody around us in every community. But us as teachers, having learners which are in constant contact with us outside the classroom, I think it happens to be something really crucial to really reflect on what is my role and how am I behaving? What am I doing outside the classroom that it's having an impact, a direct impact on learners' life? What do you think about that?
Yeah, this was a very interesting chapter, and as you mentioned, it was really about trying to bring students together, those students that tend to be marginalized. So I think most cultures can relate to certain groups of students that are marginalized, that for social economical reasons, they don't have the same opportunities, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom in real life, of course. So I think one of the challenges actually, and thinking in our context in Mexico, we certainly, depending on the parts of Mexico where you reside, we're going to see certain students that are marginalized. But I think what we need to try to help our teacher trainers realize is that one of our goals is to try to integrate all students. And I think even from a linguistic standpoint, we're gonna have students who are struggling with the language, some more so than others. And so our goal is to how can we facilitate this process of bringing those students together. And I think this chapter really addresses this. They talk about a group investigation model, right, where they look at 4 features. And I think it's important to mention these 4 features, 1 being investigation, 2 being interaction, 3 interpretation, and 4 intrinsic motivation. Right. So I think those 4, investigation, interaction, interpretation, and intrinsic motivation, trying to incorporate those 4 into this inquiry-based learning approach, I think is really interesting. I wrote a piece a couple of years ago on this very topic about how to bring in research into an everyday classroom, right? So teachers or students or teachers would help students find ways to collect data, and regardless of the course, right? They would collect data. So maybe it's an interview, maybe it's a survey, maybe they observe something outside of class, but they help them actually collect the data. They analyze it to a degree, and then they present it. And I think it's very much in line with this same chapter where they talk about these 6 stages of this group investigation model as the classroom. Number 1, the class determines a tool or organization and research group, so they actually form the groups themselves. Then number 2, the group plans some sort of investigation. Right. Number 3, the groups carry out the investigation. Number 4, the groups then plan how to present their findings. Number 5, the groups make a presentation. And 6, the teacher and students evaluate their projects. So it's kind of involved. But I think it's worth looking at these stages in more depth, in more depth that we can possibly talk about it today. But I think that having your point about the teacher working very closely with the students, right, and them forming groups, that they're forming these discovery opportunities, these inquiry-based learning opportunities for them to really search out information. And in this case, in different cultures, really to learn about each other's cultures. I think, again, linguistically, we can look at parallels, how we can do something very similar so that the weaker students can really integrate and interact with students that maybe have a higher language proficiency.
Right. I see this as an investment because the work you do and whatever you work with the students, which happens to be outside the classroom also, and focus on personal needs, personal background, and aspects of interest for the community, not just for the student, but for the community itself. And it's paying well for the classroom advantages. It's helping the classroom, it's helping the students to develop their learning. Learning becomes a lot more meaningful, and the impact is direct because the impact is on the community. So, but that's a teacher that it's not taking the suit off, and that's pretty much the question. And is there a moment in which you take the teacher suit off when you go outside the classroom? Is it really a moment in which you step outside and you leave it inside, or you step outside the school and you live it inside the school, or the other way around, because that's a two-way reflection. When I come into the classroom, can I really live myself being my individual outside? Oh, I think it's I can give my opinion in that, but it's more important for teachers to reflect on that. Do I really have a moment in which I stop being a teacher? Do I really have a moment in which I can live without, I mean, moments without my personal life, without my problems? And I think it all goes in this big bowl that grows and grows and has an impact. Now, what I see in this book are the examples of keeping the suit at all time, or maybe not even having a suit. I mean, being a teacher at all time, and focusing on the I see as one of the objectives the development and the change in the community itself. Not only students, they are looking at the student as the base of the community, obviously, but they are also involving more and more people, because students are going outside to do research. Teachers are going outside to talk to parents and have these workshops and train parents if needed. I mean, in a different model you can see in this chapter of the book. But all of this goes to the idea of having a direct, immediate impact in the community beyond whatever learning the students may have along the line, right? But everything is it's again what we discussed earlier today, a network, and how far you want to get this network. So I go back to the original thought of how this all comment started. Is me as a teacher, what kind of impact am I causing outside the classroom? Do I really take the suit off? Is my behavior affecting students, my behavior outside the classroom? Yeah, I know we all have personal lives, and I totally agree with personal lives, but we do have a community in which we live in, and in small places like Aguascalientes, which is not that big, we all have close contact with different people outside, teachers and students outside the classroom. So do I really take the teacher suit off? And what impact does that cause in my students first, and then in the community itself?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at how we communicate and what roles that we take outside of the classroom, I think we need to ask ourselves, am I taking a teacher role or a learner role? The question you're asking about, do we take the suit off or not? If we can leave the suit on in two ways. We can teach and facilitate outside the community or outside of the classroom, or we can put on the student role and look at ourselves as learners, as teachers do, and say, okay, I'm a teacher, but I have an obligation to learn something maybe outside the classroom, because of course we're learning inside the classroom on a day-to-day basis with our students, but more importantly, I think sometimes is just to find time to dedicate to ourselves as a learner, so that we are continually hopefully improving and learning more as we gain experience. Because as you know, Piry, we've talked about this too, is experience is just a number. How many years have you been teaching, right? But it's really the engagement that took place in those years of experience that matter. And I think it really relates to this question that you posed, taking the suit off or not. Okay, and what kind of role are you pursuing, a teacher role or a learner role?
Now, yes, and this is something we have discussed a little bit before, that we keep on being learners at all time, and we'll also learn from our students and from the happenings inside and outside the classroom. But I want to add a little bit, another piece to the puzzle, and see what can we reflect about this. To this formula of not taking the suit off, or not even having a suit, just being a teacher as part of your life, as part of your individual life too, or the other way around. I mean, any way you want to see it, inside, outside the classroom. Add technology. technology in the sense of communications, means in which your students can reach you at all time. And I know this is a touchy topic because how much can you attend students' needs when they are really needs or when they are not needs, and they are just moments in which they urge for something and they contact you through technology and they need immediate answers because of any reason, because of a fair reason or because of neglective reason, something in which they are not really considering that they are maybe doing things at the last minute and that's when they need the help. Or maybe it's somebody that really actually it's working hard on that and really needs the support. So I'm adding this piece to the puzzle. This speed up that we talked in the first program, speeding up the contact communication and speeding up the situation in the classroom, it's also for the outside. So what do I do? When do I stop? How can I handle situations when students need me urgently in my non-working hours? So what about my teacher suit? Or am I really taking off the suit or what? I mean, it's a difficult, I know it's a difficult question or a difficult issue to really answer, but it's there, and I think it's true, and I'm for sure you have lived that, Ben.
Yeah, it's interesting as you mentioned this. I'm thinking now at a slightly different perspective about this question about when do we take the suit off? How do we if we even take the suit off?
Right.
And I think it really boils down to when I look at a course, and again, we're talking informal education, that's our context. So within some sort of school structure where there's a syllabus and there's a curriculum. So looking at a particular course, for me, it all boils down to three aspects. The first is what kind of communication between students themselves and students and myself as the instructor need to take place in order for them to achieve their course objectives. For example, synchronous versus asynchronous communication, real-time communication versus communication over time. That's one. Number two, is the interaction going to be online or offline? That is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be online or some combination of some sort of blended delivery system? Okay, so we have types of communication, we have types of delivery, and the third is the educational theory or theories that are integrated in the classroom. What kind of theories and philosophies of education does the teacher have that is going to obviously influence the educative experience? But I think it's a combination of those three, not looking at any one of those, but looking at types of communication, synchronous versus asynchronous, the delivery system, online or offline, and the theory or theories that are involved. But taking those three together, and I think that will get to a closer answer to when do we take the suit off or not, because I think, as you mentioned, and I know we've talked about it a lot, that, if our educative experience oftentimes and the educative experience of our students extend beyond the face-to-face classroom, just because of these same interactions that happen. They email us or they send, some sort of forum group or whatever communication that happens outside of the classroom really influences what happens in the classroom. So it actually becomes difficult to separate just looking at the educative experience face-to-face physically in the classroom versus what happens outside, because they intertwine a lot as we, in our case, use technology a lot to help students, again, in and out of the classroom.
Right. And well, it's all the big situation that, and it requires maybe deep analysis or even research to see all this. But this book, coming back to the beginning of all of this, this book that I came across, I think it has a good sample and evidence of making things beyond the classroom, which have a direct, immediate impact, and not only in students, in communities. And I go to another question: what is the goal of helping our students to develop the language or whatever course we are teaching? What is the goal of helping our students in their formal education? I think one of the ultimate goals is that they go and be and are a productive, positive force, to call it some way, in our communities, in benefit of everybody in the community. Oh, your sound went off, I guess, Ben. You have your sound
sorry
off.
about that. Sorry about that. I got my computer locked up there for a second. Yeah, absolutely. I think, PD, I think we might want to go ahead and talk about some of our experiences. We're getting a little bit close to time here to finish up, but I think, yeah, your point is well taken about what our roles are both in and out of the classroom, and I think it really relates well to personal learning networks and how we more globally look at our own professional development as learning experiences and how we can really use those to have a better or bigger impact on what we do in the classroom with our students.
Yes. Well, and before going on, I want to remind everybody that we have ways of contact, and we are waiting for you to contact us, make comments, send an email, leave a message, and tell us what you want to talk about, what you want to discuss. Tell us if you want to come live with us one day. You are invited to do so. And whatever you need, there's contact in the different networks. In Facebook, we have the TLC Teacher Learning Cast group. You can get the Facebook fan page, and you can get there and see all the posts related to this cast. And for the Facebook live transmission, you can click the link above, and you can get to a better transmission with a different angle view of this and a better sound. And before running out of time, Ben, the experience of the week, which I like this because it happens to be something that happens to us during the week, and this is our catharsis.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to kind of extend our conversation from last week. Last week, I shared an experience with a writing group, a fourth semester writing course that I'm teaching, where I shared an experience where I worked with my group by sharing a list of writing errors, and they self-corrected based on the list of errors. So I didn't really provide a lot of direct feedback on an individual basis, but instead gave kind of a group a list of errors that they then checked each one by one, and we checked those as a group and clarified doubts. And I wanted to do something similar this week with my propedeutic group. So I have a first year student writing group this semester, and they are developing their first academic 5-paragraph essay. And I did something similar where I shared a list of errors, and I asked them to check and make corrections on their own work. The next day, I shared the same list, and I had them partner up with a student from a classmate from another group. I actually have two proped groups, right? So I had them partner up with a classmate from the other proped group, so they weren't in contact with them directly at the time that they were leaving the comments. And I had them take the same list and have them make comments to their partner group. And using the same list, I had them find 3 things that the partner did well, 3 things that the partner needed to consider or that didn't do all that well. I need to back up and say that I asked my students to actually create those 2 same lists for their first as they evaluated their own work. So they already had their own personal list of things they did well, things that they needed to consider. So they partnered up, they left comments in Google Docs, and then the rest of the week they went back to their own document and taking into consideration their partner's comments and also just taking another look and becoming more familiar with the list, they corrected their own work, and we spent the rest of the week doing the rest of the 3 days doing that type of activity. So I applied a survey to this group, to both appropriate groups, basically asking how they felt about that experience. Okay, very specific to what I just explained about their self-assessment and peer assessment, how they felt about giving assessment, how they felt about conducting their own assessment. And I wanted to take a few minutes to share some of the findings that came about. And this was this week that this happened. And one of the questions was, how did you feel about having an opportunity to self-assess? And it was on that, I used a Likert scale from 1 to 5. So the Likert scale for almost all of these questions was 1 meant I hated it, 5 meant I loved it. So in this first question, how did you feel about having an opportunity to self-assess or self-correct your own work based on the list of written elements? The list of writing elements, again, were the list of mistakes or errors that I developed based on my review of all of their work. So I created that list. And as you noticed here, most of the students actually loved it. And you'll see here 4 answered. Here we have like almost 9 answered 4, and about 4 students answered 3. I should start off by saying that this is the breakdown between Prope A and the Propedeutic A and Propedeutic B groups. These groups are not by level. These are just arbitrary, randomly divided up groups. And 27 students participated. I have 29 total students, so 2 students did not participate. 27 out of the 29 participated. This is the breakdown here. So I should have said that first. But basically, you see here it was favorable for most. So I would say 4 students really didn't have much of opinion. They were split down the middle. A similar question was asked, though, about how did you feel about having an opportunity to assess your classmates' work? So now this is them taking kind of a teacher role. And you'll notice here that although somewhat favorable, you can see that they didn't feel quite as comfortable leaving comments to their classmates' work. And I think this is understandable, being that, again, this is a probably an A2 level group, according to the Common European Framework. So this is probably a high basic level English proficiency level. So I think it's natural to probably not be all that comfortable. But you can see that there was still somewhat favorable, and there was no responses under the non-favorable side.
Ben, it would be maybe interesting to have a focus group on that issue itself, about why they have this perspective of having the opportunity to assess classmates, just for the sakes of knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. This was kind of, for time purposes, and I wanted to try to put together something for today's show. Yeah, definitely. I need to do a focus group, get a little bit more information, get some quantitative or qualitative, I should say, qualitative information here to kind of support these results. Absolutely.
Right.
Another question, how did you feel about receiving feedback from your classmates? So it looks like more students felt comfortable receiving feedback, and some were a little bit slightly less comfortable. But I still think that it was still favorable. I was actually surprised. I was really anticipating more negative responses to either receiving feedback or giving feedback, or even self-correcting. I wasn't really sure going into it, especially at a level, a group at this level, at a lower level. And again, this is the first time that they were asked to create a 5-paragraph essay. So this is the context with which they are answering these particular questions. We're looking at 5 paragraphs, an introduction paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. So a lot of the things that they were asked to do for this first essay were completely new to them.
Yeah, that's why I was really interested on knowing the whys, because I would expect them also not going to the negative side, but they didn't.
Yeah, me too. Let's see, another one. How did you feel about the order in which they first self-assessed and then provided feedback? So this was more about the order of the week. Again, starting out with the self-assessment first, then providing peer feedback, and then receiving their peer feedback, and then continuing with their self-assessment. And these are the results, very similar to this up here as far as how they answered. Another interesting thing was the time that it took to answer. If you notice, like this question took on average 3.96. Now, I'm assuming these are seconds, okay?
Yeah.
I'm assuming these are seconds.
Yeah.
But this one was pretty quick versus some of these that maybe took a little bit longer. How did you feel about the way that your instructor provided feedback? So I was curious about how because the way that I provided feedback, and I need to kind of explain this a little bit. Some students would ask for feedback, whether in class or outside of class, but it didn't happen a lot. But I did, anytime anybody asked me, I would give them feedback. But I did not make it a point to provide feedback directly to their documents, again, unless they asked. So depending on the class, sometimes they would ask me and I wouldn't leave comments in their Google Docs. Sometimes they would send me an email outside of class and I would leave a comment to their Google Docs. So it really varied just depending on who asked for what. And, sometimes they would ask me questions and I would just turn it over to the whole group and have a discussion there, and I would write something on the board. So it really was varied in the way that I was giving feedback. But I was curious how they felt about how I gave feedback during this week. And again, all of these questions are related to this week, these sets of experiences. And it looked like they were in favor in general of how that turned out. So that's one thing. Another one here, these last two questions here, and it's hard to tell because they look like the exactly same question, but the types of responses are different. Which best describes the way you felt this week? Okay, now this question is how they felt they learned. Let me see if I get this right here. I'm sorry. The second question is how they learned. This one here, over here on the right, is if they felt that they learned a lot, or if they felt they didn't learn.
Okay.
All right. And okay, I'm blanking out. Okay, and then the first one is how they felt about the instructor feedback. So it's kind of similar to this other question. How they felt about instructor feedback, and then how much this question on the right is how much they felt they learned throughout the week. The point here is that they felt pretty good, I think, about the way the instructor that I provided feedback, but they felt that it was a little bit of a struggle, I think, for the learning. They thought it was kind of difficult, basically. That they felt that they learned, but maybe some felt that they learned not as much as others.
Okay.
And I'm going to share one open question here at the bottom, I think, that will help shed some light on this particular question. One question here at the end was that all of them finished the essay. One question was, did you finish the 5-paragraph essay? Because I think that was also kind of related. All of them but one answered that they did. Now, let me open up very quickly. Let me open up because I don't see the open question. I want to share these open questions only because it sheds light on one of the points here so give me just 1 second here. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open up the link, and then I'll come back to you. But I don't know. I felt it was interesting, and I always have an interest in self-assessment, like what students can do on their own, right? And giving them the opportunity, because sometimes at least in my case, I feel like sometimes I don't give my students enough opportunity to do things on their own, maybe, and really try to realize that that they are more autonomous, maybe, that I'm willing to give them credit for. So I always try to find some opportunities to do that. I don't know if you've had an experience, Piry, where you've kind of let them kind of go on their own and they have been able to achieve something kind of on their own without you intervening.
Oh, well, yeah. I think lately I've been trying to lead my individual session towards that side. Having the students doing all the talking and me doing the suggestions or whatever I have to say until they require them. If they don't, well, I then don't. I just keep on asking. And but it raises a question to me. Do you think they are aware of how they feel about this self-assessment and peer assessment before you ask them about it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And that's why I asked the question. I mean, I don't know how you know, my feeling is, because I would have to actually ask them that
Yes.
question. But
They're aware.
my feeling is that, you know, the students in general aren't as aware unless we ask them to think about it. You know, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I want to try to do is to bring about this awareness. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I really don't know. Maybe they were already aware that they
Yeah,
liked something, and
the second question, following up this one, are they really aware before you ask them? And now, once you ask them, does it cause a major impact or a different point of view, or does it cause an effect in them being aware of how they feel about self-assessment and peer assessment?
Well, I think that if they are sharing an idea, saying, if they say, well, you know, I hadn't thought about it, but you know, I like how I like having the opportunity to self-assess my work before I get a grade.
Right.
And if they make that awareness, I think that's a good thing. If they answer, you know, I don't like self-awareness, and I, as their instructor, continue to force them to do it, and knowing that they don't like it, well, then I guess that's going to have a different outcome. And so I think the part of it is, yes, helping students become self-aware, but also becoming self-aware as the instructor. So I'm hopefully making the better decisions in the future, so that they, you know, that they're engaged, right? So that was the purpose too, to see, is this working with my group? Do they like it or not? Should I do something similar, because we're going to write another essay next unit? And, you know, and all of this goes into my planning and reflection and consideration for future classes, to say, okay, let's either try this or let's try something different.
Right. Now, I don't know students, but for example, in my case, if when I suddenly open my eyes about something I did myself or something I reflect on about my own actions, well, it causes an impact, because then it becomes a commitment to myself.
Well, and in writing specifically, you know, writing is like, you know, these errors that I shared with them, these are common errors that every single writer at every single level that I come in contact with face. And these are errors that I talk about over and over and over. So, I mean, one of the reasons why I did it this way, because this is the first time I've tried this, was that and it was kind of a selfish reason. I thought, well, does it make sense to leave the same comment 29 times to every document? Or can I just say it once and have them become self-aware, so maybe they actually learn? I don't have to, you know, do as much, you know, thinking, you know, smartly here, right? How can I work smarter, not harder?
Yes.
And you know, and I think, at least now, my first feeling is that maybe I'm onto something. Maybe this might work in the future. I don't know, but it's a small sample group. But the idea is that trying to have them, I'm certain that if students keep going through this list, they're going to get better and better at not writing the error to begin with, and second, being able to detect it if they do. And I just, so the idea was that they just try to become a little bit more self-aware of these particular set of errors that we came in contact with. So yeah, that's basically it. I don't want to take up more time, because I want to give you some time to talk about your experience, but that was something that I wanted to share. And I think it's something that we'll probably end up talking about in the future, because I think these types of experiences, I think for me in my own particular case, relate a lot to the writing process and courses that I tend to teach quite often.
Yeah, I think, and it's worth it to explore it, and it's worth it to go on these discussions. I mean, and that's a good thing of being online, live, and in YouTube because we manage our own time. And today, Saturday morning, every Saturday morning we are here. We can take a couple of minutes extra. It doesn't matter, as long as it's an interesting discussion for you all. We invite you to give us comments and ask questions or give us suggestions or whatever you have to say to join us. You're invited to come if you want to. This is what we want this show to be like. Not really a show, but a sharing space for all teachers that are interested. All right, so you can take a glance at our fan page in Facebook, Teacher Learning Cast, and you can also click in YouTube. We have the live transmission, and then we have it on demand. All right, and also in Benjamin's website and in my own website. And you can find all this information at the fan page in Facebook, Teacher Learning Cast. And well, yes, I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about my experience of the week, which was a moment of light at the end of the week. Yesterday, Friday, I was with one of my students discussing about the class that she was planning for her practicum, and she came with a question. She had two videos to use in the classroom. The same thing. She was gonna show a game in a video, and she was pretty much she was gonna work like the instructions. This is the way the game is played, and we are gonna do it in the classroom, right? But she had two videos. One video with famous people, and another video with two kids playing the game. Now, according to what she said, because I haven't watched the videos, the video with the famous characters, I think it was Madonna and Justin Bieber or somebody else, something like that, was really fun. And the activity was, it was really dynamic, and it was in a show, in a TV show. So you know how this happens, and the purpose is to engage people into the show. So that was one of the videos. And the other video was a couple of kids just playing it, which in her opinion was a little bit more boring and not that engaging, but a lot more explicit in the rules for the game, because it even had the written description in the video of the game. So she was aware that it was the kids video was really clear to understand, and the famous people video was really engaging, but there may be the risk of not being that clear. And the point in here was, how do I make the decision? Clarity over our motivation, motivation and engagement over clarity in the instructions. And she, what she wanted me to do is to tell her which one to use. And going back to our previous talk, yeah, I didn't give in an answer. I just asked, I just went to what I want to make the point today, making the right decisions in the classroom because of the right reasons. She had, and I don't know what she decided. This is something we're going to discuss next week. She has to decide on which video to use. But my point was to make her aware of what is the right reason to decide. Because the first thing is it just because it's famous people? Is it just because I consider it's fun, it's funny, or just because I myself think, and I started to try to help her and raise the awareness on what is the right reason to make the right decision. Because on a personal point of view, well, engagement, it's as important as the clarity, and both things can be coded. So that's the main point of all this example. What can lead you to make the right decision for your students or for your class? Now, what's the right reason to do it? And that's a question, just a question. I mean, not an answer. I have my own ideas, and last week we discussed about something that may be related to this, but I come with the word that you constantly use, Ben, and I think it's important: awareness. Awareness of what? Something that we have previously talked in former shows. We have talked about knowing our students. And it's something that she came to understand by all this questioning and all this back and forth on what's the right decision. And yes, she managed to have a little bit of herself came to the awareness of, right, it's also, I mean, it's not just me, it's about a student. me as a teacher have some control and have some ideas and maybe more experience on certain aspects, but students are the stars of the show, so I need to consider them. And at the end, what the way we ended this, the way we didn't end the topic, we just paused it while she decided what to do. Is that it's really important to know your students. That's the first thing about it. It's really, really important to know your students. And my final question, which I didn't expect an answer at that moment, is: do you know your students well enough as to make a decision on which video? Because there was an extra issue in the video. There was something related to a sexual comment in the Famous People video. And it became part of the decision, like, how can I bring this into the classroom? And I didn't exactly know what the comment was, but at the beginning she was with the idea that, yeah, but it's something, I mean, it's not something that would cause a big impact, or it's something that it's just going to pass by, no problem. But when we came to the idea of knowing your students, and she became aware of, yeah, well, one of the aspects I need to consider is my students and how well I know them. Then she started to wonder, well, yes, I consider that comment not a problem and not an issue to deal with, but would my students consider in that way the same thing? So when we started to get this reflection on making the right decision for the classroom because of the right reasons, and it's something that it's a to be continued for next week and see what happened with that video. And then at the end, well, I just started to think about different topics or different situations in the classroom that may take us to this situation of impact, right? To what helped us to make the right decision about things like the topic itself for the classroom, for example. The topic that we are going to use in the classroom, or the material selection for the classroom, the context we're going to bring, my attitudes or my reactions towards discipline, the vocabulary I'm going to teach. Certainly, I've had these questions a lot of times. Shall I teach my students swearing words or things like those? And the kind of projects you're going to involve them. I mean, it's a bunch of decisions. And the question is, are you making the decision because of the right reason? What about that, Ben?
Yeah, there's so many things there. I mean, this is a really good topic that we could, again, talk a lot about. But one thing that really comes to mind, especially when you look at games, I'm constantly reminded of Wiggins and McTighe's book, Learning by Design, where they talk about specifically games as being engaging, being efficient, and being effective. And so when I talk about and think about games, and I'm talking with learners or teachers about games, it's very easy, I think, to look at games as being engaging because they're fun, they're attractive, they're kinesthetic, whatever. It's easy to see students really participate well in those. But as language teachers, we also need to look at, well, how effective is it and how efficient is it? So how effective is it? Is it meeting some sort of linguistic or conceptual goal? What is the goal of the game? So that would be like one driving question, right? Okay, so this game looks fun. That's fine. It's appropriate. And this whole idea of the sexual nature of the particular comment or the game or whatever, that's almost another issue. But the idea is this a game appropriate for the particular set of learners? Okay, that's one. Now, what kind of goal, linguistic or otherwise, is to be achieved for participating in this game? And then how efficient, that is, how long will it typically take for them to achieve this goal, right? So engagement, efficiency, and effectiveness, looking at those three aspects and really forming questions with teacher trainers. And if you're doing it yourself, considering those three aspects, okay, why am I applying this game? Okay, it's fun, but what kind of linguistic goal am I looking to achieve? And how long is it going to take to get it? Is it going, And these are, I know, complex questions, but I think they're very important so that we're not just looking at the engagement aspect, that we're not just saying, okay, it's fun. And now I'm not saying there's not any I don't want to say that games also don't have some role in the classroom just for engagement purposes, because I do see cases where, let's say that a classroom is very stressed or whatever, and you see a need just to kind of let them relax a little bit and maybe have them participate in a game in a short, for a short amount of time, just to kind of relieve some of that stress. I see a benefit there, but a lot of times we're looking at games to also achieve some sort of linguistic goal, in our cases being language teachers, or some sort of content-based goal where they're learning something. What are they learning about when they participate in this? So those things, this comes to mind when you bring this up, Piry, about really looking at how we can incorporate games and help them become self-aware. How can they share this information with us? Because as tutors, maybe we don't even have, maybe we don't even know for sure what the goal is to even guide them, unless they tell us a little bit more about what their thinking is in terms of the efficiency and the effectiveness, really kind of going in deep into those aspects, whereas the engagement aspect might be kind of obvious, whether it works or not.
Right, and it all goes back to planning, and something I work a lot with all my students at all in all practicum classes. Are they planning based on an objective, or are they planning based on the activity? Which may bring this. This is just what you mentioned about games. It's just an example. Maybe it's a really something that we can take advantage of, but because of the conscious or unconsciously plan on having the game itself, the teacher centers the whole class around the game. And well, that may be a problem. Whether the same game, when you plan from the perspective of the objective, comes to be really effective, and you even start to modify the activity itself, the game itself, to fit the purposes of the class, the objectives of the class. And that was one of the things we were discussing with this student, that I was talking about the video itself and the use of the video, but yes, actually it was a game, and she was intending to use the game because she likes the game. But the way the game was its play would ask students to practice an uncommon way of a grammar structure that is not normally used. And so I started to ask her if she was aware of that. And she was saying like, well, but it's a correct structure. All right, but it's not the common structure. And do you think that's the structure that it's going to come in the exam? Do you think whoever evaluates them, it's going to agree that that's what they expect? Or what's going to happen to the regular form or the most common structure on this tense? And do you think it's worth it to avoid it, to use the structure of the game? And it all goes back to the objective. What is the objective? The game or the language that is going to be developed, right? And we can go on with this discussion and talk about all of the elements that have to be considered for the topic, the context, the function, the et cetera, right? But yes, my point in here is that we have to really be careful about making the decisions in the classroom because of the right reasons. And the right reasons are focused on the objectives with the students in the classroom, are focused on the characteristics of our students, maybe also focus on the school itself, the policies from the school itself, and whatever the school intends to, for example, a humanistic approach or a more communicative approach, or maybe just a school which is based on developing in students the skill to speak, and that's it. So all of this may influence our decisions, and sometimes, as you just mentioned in your example as well, we take less in consideration. We focus on the game, and that's it.
Yeah, and if you boil down a particular grammatical structure that happens to be the focus of that game, and you're saying that this grammatical structure is not even worth considering, then it really is less about the game. Really has nothing to do about the game. The game is not even the issue. The issue is, okay, first of all, what grammatical structures, or linguistic aspect are we even evaluating? And then starting there and then saying, okay, well, how can we engage them? Okay, well, maybe a game or whatever. But I think even maybe starting, as you're saying, starting with the what is the goal? Is it effective? And then more importantly too, and often harder, is to find the efficiency of that. Like how efficient, how much practice are they actually getting of that grammatical structure by participating in that game? So all those questions, I think, need to kind of unfold. And again, students need to become self-aware of that. In their planning stages and implementing and evaluating. I think it's, personally, and I know that we have a semester to complete a course, but students going into something and they have, knowing that as a tutor, maybe that things aren't going to go well, as long as they learn from that experience, I think that's right. It's almost, I would say a big benefit of actually going into a situation thinking probably this is not going to work, but I'm going to see what I can learn from it and then move on, is something to consider. Because again, for me, I feel that if students can learn to reflect and become aware on their own of these issues, they retain it a lot more than if we just tell them that this is the way it is, or this is our opinion on something. So it's really just trying to find those opportunities to make that happen.
And it's sometimes difficult. Well, not difficult, but the thing is that it takes time, going back and forth until the students realize. And just to sum up, I at the end, I started to reflect on when do you see this kind of situation, like that it's really important to consider the right reason why to make a decision. Well, the first thing is that I think at all times in the classroom, you need to look for the right reason, not for the sake of doing something or because you think so. Maybe that you think so, maybe apply if you are really aware of different aspects in the classroom. But things like politics, religion, sex, violence in the classroom, well, there are things that those are really points in which it's easier to be aware that you have to be very careful and you have to decide write things about it, just as a suggestion. And then it may be not that positive to make the decision because you believe something that it's in one way that it's right, just because you believe is right and you don't have a really background on why it is right, or make a decision on something because people have told you so, what you just said, because somebody told you so, and you make that decision because somebody told me, or make a decision because you consider it's taboo, because you consider it, and that's it. And it's all about your beliefs and your character and the way you have been developing your personal growth and knowledge, and just being careful about making decisions because of that only. And what you believe about the students. Be careful with what you believe. You need to be a little bit more conscious and aware of our students and how they are really like. It may be better to look at as a basing point in your decision the relationship you establish with students, the relationship you have so far with them, as to how well you know them and what can you decide for them is better in their learning, having learning as the objective. And what I don't know about the students also may be a good aspect to reflect when making a decision. Because if you don't know, well, that may give you a warning and you don't risk it. Institution policies, as I mentioned before, educational model of the institution, and my capacity to handle certain situations, and my awareness of not getting into fields that I'm not a professional at. Being specifically about personal issues that may be delicate, touchy to handle with the students, and it's easy for us just to bring an activity in which they talk about their feelings, but we may not be psychologists as to be able to handle situations when talking about feelings, right? So just food for thought for everybody to be careful in this. I mean, as a suggestion, just to wonder and to have this question: why do we decide to do something in the classroom? Is it the right reason why I'm deciding to do it or not?
Very good. Yeah, so a lot of good, deep questions here I think we brought up today. We did
I like questions more than answers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I like the question because I would like to have the answer. So I like to listen to you guys watching this transmission, giving us your opinions and your possible answers. Why not? I mean, it's fair to have an opinion, and it's fair to share that opinion as long as you're responsible for what you say, right?
Yeah, and again, we really encourage everyone to be a part of the conversation. Let us know what you think. We don't expect everyone to agree with what we say, and sometimes we don't agree with each other. The point here is that we all want to create a space where you have a voice, you can share your ideas and experiences, and the point is to learn from each other, right? That's the point of this podcast, is really to build a community around these open discourses, these open conversations, and talking about the issues of the day, talking about things that we face, challenges that we face, successes that we face, and for the sole purpose of learning. And regardless if you're a pre-service English language educator, regardless if you're experienced and have a lot of history and things to share, we encourage you to do so. You can do so by participating in our Facebook page at Teacher Learning Cast. And we're also on Twitter at #TLCELT. And feel free to be a part of the conversation. Again, we're always looking for educators to also participate in our live broadcast. We are here every morning, Saturday morning at 8:15 Central Standard Time. And again, feel free to participate and get involved.
Yes, you can go to Benjamin's website, which is benjaminstewart.wordpress.com. You can get to my website, which is homers2000.wixsite.com/PDHA. And you can get to the Facebook fan page, which is at Facebook, Teacher Learning Cast. You can search for it like that. And today we have a long show, but we had a lot of interesting topics, and we can keep on talking about it. But I think time has come to pass by like 30 minutes ago.
So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and conclude. Thanks, Piry, again for your insights and discussions this week. Thanks everybody, for those of you who watched us live and who's also watching the final broadcast or the recording. And again, feel free to leave comments in any of the spaces that we mentioned. And we really appreciate your watching the show and being part of the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ben, for today's talk and questions and answers and whatever we could share. I think today I take a lot of things with me to think, reflect, and act.
Same here. All right, that'll be all for now. Thanks, everybody. We'll sign out, and we'll see you in the next live broadcast.
Thanks for learning.